I was halfway through a lukewarm cup of coffee when the radio on my desk crackled to life. Dispatch to Station 4. We've got a trespassing complaint at Cedar Hollow Lake. Caller says a man's refusing to leave private HOA property. Possibly armed. I glanced at the address on the screen. Cedar Hollow Lake. My lake. My land. I'm Mark Danner, 54 years old, third-generation rancher, volunteer fire chief, and full-time keeper of a 600-acre patch of Montana earth my grandfather cleared with a mule and a borrowed chainsaw. The fire station doubles as my office. The dispatcher? My niece, Jenna. She didn't know yet that the man accused of trespassing was sitting 10 feet from her console, staring at the radio, trying not to laugh. The caller was Paula Everett, president of the Cedar Hollow Homeowners Association, a woman with too much time, too little land, and a burning need to control everything she could see out her kitchen window. For months, Paula had been obsessed with my lake, a 10-acre spring-fed basin that my grandfather dug out by hand in 1951 to irrigate the pastures. It's where my dad taught me to swim, where my kids learned to cast a line, and where my wife, Anna, used to sit on the dock reading before the cancer came. The HOA's properties started about half a mile from the lake's north bank. They had no legal access, no shared boundary, and no water rights. But that didn't stop Paula from calling it our community lake during HOA meetings or posting drone photos on their website like she owned it. The first time she showed up at my gate, she brought cookies and a clipboard, said she wanted to establish cooperative use guidelines for the lake. I told her I'd consider it if she'd sign over her Tesla. She didn't come back with cookies after that. By spring, she'd sent me 3 certified letters, all full of highlighted statutes, false easement claims, and a map she must have drawn with a crayon. I ignored the first 2. The third one claimed that long-standing community use entitled the HOA to reasonable access. I called my attorney, Frank Ruiz, a ranch lawyer with a voice like gravel and a patience shorter than a barbed wire fence. He laughed, said, "Tell her to pound sand. Or better, call the sheriff next time she trespasses." I didn't have to wait long. 2 weeks later, I found Paula and 2 of her HOA board members standing knee-deep on my shoreline, waving around clipboards and a camera crew. One guy was wearing boat shoes in the mud, complaining about mosquitoes. I walked down the hill, boots crunching the dry grass, and said, "You folks lost?" Paula didn't even flinch. "We're surveying the area for community improvements. A walking trail and a public dock." "Public?" I repeated, stepping closer. "This lake's on my deed. The dock, the land, all of it." "You're trespassing." Her smile tightened. "We have legal grounds to verify access rights." I pulled my phone, hit record. "Then verify this. You're about to be escorted off my property." She called me a bully. I told her to call a lawyer. That night, she posted in the HOA Facebook group claiming I'd threatened violence. My wife saw it through a friend. Dozens of comments calling me dangerous, unstable, unfit to be fire chief. That one stung. Anna's memory still hangs over everything I do. She loved this town, these people. She used to bake pies for the same neighbors, now gossiping about me like I was some outlaw. So I did what she would have wanted. Stayed calm, documented everything, and waited for Paula to make her biggest mistake. When the 911 call came in that morning, it was exactly that. I leaned back in my chair, listening to Jenna confirm the address. "Copy that, dispatch," I said into the radio deadpan. "We'll handle it." She froze. Uncle Mark? That's your property." "Sure is. Want me to reroute?" "No," I said, standing up and grabbing my jacket. "I'll respond personally." Outside, the sky was the color of cold steel. I could smell rain in the air, that sweet mix of pine, wet soil, and diesel from the trucks parked out front. The drive to the lake took 5 minutes. The whole way down I rehearsed what I'd say, but truthfully I didn't need to. Paula always talked herself into trouble. When I got there, she was pacing near the dock, on the phone, umbrella in one hand, little white dog barking at my truck tires. 2 sheriff units were already parked by the gate. Deputy Harris, a young guy with more beard than experience, nodded at me as I stepped out. "Morning, Chief," he said carefully. "We got a call about a trespasser refusing to leave HOA property." "Yep," I said. "That'd be me," Paula blinked. You're the trespasser!" I pointed to the big red sign on the gate. Private property, Danner Ranch. Then I handed Harris the deed copy I kept in the glove box. Lake's been in my family for 70 years. She doesn't own a drop of it. Paula started yelling about maps, old easements, and her right to protect community assets. Harris just sighed and looked at me. You want her trespassed? I nodded once. He turned to Paula. Ma'am, you're not to return to this property without written consent. Do you understand? She sputtered. This isn't over. As she stormed off, her dog slipped its leash, jumped into the lake, and started paddling in circles. I almost smiled, but I knew it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. That call was just the beginning of something bigger, something uglier than property lines and pond water. Because by the next week, Paula wasn't just calling dispatch. She was calling the EPA, the county zoning office, and even the state wildlife department, all claiming I was polluting community water, and this time, she had friends in high places. By the following Monday, I had 3 government trucks parked by my gate. One said County Zoning Enforcement. Another, Montana Department of Environmental Quality. The third was an unmarked black SUV, the kind that shows up when someone's either lying or in way over their head. I watched from the porch, coffee in hand, as the men stepped out with clipboards and cameras. The lead investigator, Mr. Grayson, adjusted his tie like it was strangling him. Mr. Danner, he said, we've received multiple complaints that your lake is a man-made impoundment without proper environmental clearance. Possible contamination from fertilizer runoff, too. I nearly spit my coffee. Contamination? The only thing in that water's trout and rain, he nodded, stone-faced. We'll need to conduct an inspection. Fine, I said. But you'll do it on my terms. You stay on my property, you don't cross into the fenced pasture, and you don't touch my well pump. He agreed, and I let them through. As they walked down toward the lake, I called Frank, my lawyer. He laughed so hard I had to hold the phone away. Let me guess, Joe or Paula called in the cavalry? Looks that way, I said. Record everything, he told me. They'll find nothing. But when they don't, we'll have leverage. The inspection took 3 hours. They measured water levels, scooped samples, even photographed the old dock like it was a crime scene. When they left, I could tell by Grayson's face he already knew the truth. There was nothing illegal, nothing even questionable. The next morning I got the official report, no violations. No contamination. Water quality excellent. I printed 10 copies. That night, the HOA Facebook group lit up again. Paula had posted a photo of the trucks at my gate with the caption, "Authorities investigate illegal lake operation. Our community deserves transparency." Within minutes, her neighbors were tagging local news pages. That's when I posted my own photo, the inspection report, stamped and signed right beside her post. Caption, "Transparency delivered." HOA president caught lying again. It went viral inside the community. Dozens of homeowners commented things like, "Paula, what's your problem?" and "Leave the man alone." For the first time, she didn't reply. 3 days later, I heard tires crunching gravel outside. It was Paula's husband, Ron, standing by his SUV looking like he hadn't slept. He walked up the porch steps, hat in hand. "Mark, she went too far." "I'm sorry," I studied him. "You knew about the complaints?" He nodded. "She's been obsessed since your wife passed. Said the lake should be shared. Said it was. Wasted on just one man. That one hit harder than I expected." Ron sighed. "I'll try to calm her down. But she's angry now. Says you humiliated her online." "I didn't humiliate her," I said quietly. "She did that herself." He left without saying another word. 2 nights later, my motion sensor lights went off. It was 2:17 a.m. I checked the cameras, someone at the gate, flashlight in hand, trying the lock. I zoomed in. It was Paula. I called the sheriff. Deputy Harris arrived within minutes. Paula was still there when they pulled up, muttering something about water tests and collecting evidence. Harris asked, "Ma'am, you realize it's private property?" She ignored him, pointing her flashlight toward the lake. "You're all covering for him. The contamination's there." "Ma'am," he said again, "you're trespassing." She shoved the gate so hard it rattled the hinges. That's when Harris grabbed her arm. She screamed, loud enough to wake the cows 2 pastures over. They cuffed her gently, put her in the cruiser, and drove off. The next morning I found another letter taped to my mailbox. Not from her, from the HOA board. They'd voted to remove Paula as president. It was short, one line at the bottom. We apologize for her actions. Cedar Hollow HOA will no longer pursue access to Dana Lake. I folded it once, put it in my pocket, and went to feed the horses. But as I passed the lake, I saw something shiny near the dock, a small waterproof drone, half submerged in the mud. I pulled it out, dried it off, and opened the SD card slot. Inside was a 64 GB card labeled HOA evidence. I smiled. Looks like Paula had one last secret left to share. The next morning, I plugged that muddy little drone card into my computer. It clicked once, then opened a folder named HOA Evidence or Private. Inside were over 50 video files, all time-stamped from the past 3 months. At first, I figured it was more footage of my lake, maybe Paula trying to prove something. But no. The first clip showed her, standing in my backyard. At night, pointing the drone toward my house windows. The timestamp. The same weekend, I was out of town for my brother's surgery. She had been sneaking onto my property, recording my home. The second clip hit harder. It showed Ron, her husband, pacing by the fence line, arguing with her. "You're losing it, Paula," he said on camera. "You're going to ruin us," she snapped back. "He doesn't deserve this land. Nobody should have this much." That line stayed in my head, like a mantra of obsession. But the third clip sealed her fate. It showed Paula walking into my garage, unlocking it with a copy of my key, then setting up a small hidden camera on one of the shelves. I froze the frame. It was my own garage, clear as day. That wasn't curiosity. That was breaking and entering. I called Deputy Harris again. He came over within 20 minutes, watched 3 clips, and just shook his head. "You want to press charges?" he asked. I hesitated. I just wanted to stop. He nodded slowly. "I'll log it officially. She's already on thin ice after last week. This'll finish it." They took the footage, the drone, the memory card. By the evening, Paula was booked for trespassing, surveillance without consent, and property intrusion. It was over. At least I thought it was. A week later, I got a call from Ron. He sounded different, calmer. "She's in counseling," he said. "Joy voted me interim president. We're done with all that nonsense about your lake." I thanked him. We didn't say much else. When I hung up, I stepped outside. The sun was setting over Danner Lake, golden light dancing off the surface, the same light my wife used to love. I sat by the dock for a long time, listening to the water move. For months, that lake had been the center of a war I never wanted. But now, for the first time in a long time, it was quiet again. 3 weeks passed before I saw Paula again. She was walking down the road with Ron, head down, no clipboard, no phone. When she passed my gate, she looked up, just for a moment, and gave the smallest nod. I nodded back. No words. No apology. Just silence. And somehow that was enough. That night, I took the last copy of her old HOA letter, the one threatening me with daily fines, and burned it in the fire pit. As the paper curled into ash, I thought about everything she'd done, and how close I'd come to losing my peace over someone else's bitterness. Not again. Because out here the rules are simple. You respect the land, and it respects you back. You cross that line, well, you deal with the consequences, just like Paula did.